genre.
Welcome to Beyond Geek By Night, where we go behind the scenes of the Geek By Night podcast. On today's show, we will be discussing the 40th episode, Out of Time. So charge up your tough love weapons, because we're about to go beyond Geek By Night. I'm your host, Matt Bennett. I'm joined today, as always, by writer and creator Scott Carelli.
Hello.
As well as executive producer and writer Cass Fredrickson.
Hi.
Joel Vickers himself, Zach Luna.
Hey, yeah, how's it going?
And voice of Gretchen West, and you're not going to believe this, also Agent Gretchen, Chelsi Kern.
And executive producer.
And executive producer.
And casting director.
That's
yes.
Everything.
Hi.
In episode 40, Out of Time, we see what happens after Joel plunges into Chonky Boy Godzilla's mouth. He is confronted by Nathan, who waxes philosophical about Joel's hero journey, despite lacking the superpowers of his friends. He strikes a deal with Joel to be sent back 6 months along with everyone else. In return, Nathan turns everyone back to normal from their making it weird transformations. At Holt Manor, the watchdogs attack and David is killed, but not before giving Simon a cure for his degenerative ailment, a cure that will also remove his powers. The gang reunites and tasks Gretchen with sending them all back 6 months, including Nathan. When a core few remain, the watchdogs attack once again. Frantic and out of time, get it? Gretchen attempts to transport everyone back at once, but fails, and our heroes end up at some unknown point in space and time. Finally, we travel back to 6 months ago, where the last man, transported back by Agent Gretchen, meets up with the Ire, quote, the only person he can trust. And it's revealed that the last man is the Ire. The only thing worse than the Ire is the Ires. So here we are. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having us. Do you write those summaries yourself? Because that's very impressive.
It takes hours.
Okay,
yeah.
I was wondering.
He's like sweating as he's typing.
Typewriter, of course.
That's very efficient.
It used to be much simpler.
That's true. It has increased in complexity over time.
Final season. Let's go.
Yeah.
Zach, I'm going to pick on you first because you have not been a guest on Beyond for a while now. Actually, the last episode you were on was May of 2020 when we talked about the fandom menace.
Oh, yeah.
So I want to check in with you and Joel Vickers. What are some of your favorite Joel moments from over the years, whether it's in the show or behind the scenes?
Oh, boy. Tough spot. I've just been delighted to get to be a part of a project where the character changes over time and the involvement of the character changes over time. I had a lot of fun on the old episodes we talked about when we first started recording this show, and I had to find weird spots to record, and I was in a wooden sauna, sweating my head off trying to record old Joel lines, and I'm a real business boy while I'm sweating in my underwear. I think outside of IRL working on the show, I think my favorite moments about this season in particular was, it's not a secret to any of us that we had to make this season under different scenarios than we initially thought we might on account of all of the pandemic of everything. Mm-hmm. And I remember we did the episode where we were doing concurrent recording with people, where it was the only time that we got to act in scenes while being recorded with other characters, which is delightful. But then there was some issue with several of those where recordings failed or were corrupted or whatever, and we had to re-record those bits after the fact to fit back into the things we'd already done. It was such an interesting technical challenge, and it sounds flawless in the final episode. I think that's all Scott's doing, and I don't remember who directed that episode specifically, but I know Scott's doing all this crazy editing on it. And then for this episode in particular, by the time it came around to actually record this stuff, I was like in between functional computers and freaking out about a bunch of technical stuff. And Scott actually, because when we started making the show, Scott lived in a different city than I did. But by the time we made this season, we both lived in Los Angeles. And he was like, why don't you record it at my place and I'll direct you like in the scenes as we're recording it. And that was probably the most fun I ever had working on Geek by Night, was not being alone. Basically, like, in both of those stories, it's about not being alone, and that's my favorite part.
So for Scott and Cass, Joel started out as kind of a side character. You know, we have him introduced along with a few others in the very first episode, and over time he has definitely grown. We learn more about him, and he's just become more central. And obviously, in this episode, he saves the day after volunteering to jump into Godzilla's mouth. So I'm curious if Joel ended up where you thought he would, or if that is a character that kind of took you by surprise or maybe developed over time.
I would say definitely developed over time. I mean, I think it was like, you know, obviously we love Zach and we wanted Zach to come back, right? And so that was definitely part of it. That's why we were like totally okay with continuing to bring Joel back. But I think initially, at least, because I think we had written this episode before any of it was cast, in the Fandom Menace, I think we only brought Joel back because we were like, well, this is going to be a Gwen-centric episode. She needs to deal with her old job and responsibilities and learning to be a leader. And so it makes a lot of sense to bring her boss back from the first episode. And so we brought him back for that. And then because I think that was when we had like the most fun with Joel. Because, you know, in the first one, it's a lot of him. It's kind of the Hawkeye problem in Avengers where it's like it's a lot of him being Gwen. So we didn't really get to know Joel on any kind of deep level in the first episode. But then in that second one that he was in, like we got to like play around, and Cass co-wrote that episode and kept commenting about how much they were having fun writing Joel because he's just such a like, you know, they were able to make him such a weirdo, like just because he's so like aggro, but also a soft boy, like kind of at the same time, and just weird and yeah, was able to say things that could throw Gwen off whatever she was doing in the scene. And so then I don't remember where we were, but I know that Cass became an executive producer post Ghost Story. Or co-executive producer post Ghost Story.
Yeah.
And so we were doing the finale to or the Simon centric episode from season 1.
Right.
And I think we just like thought of the weird idea of like, okay, so there's going to be this business conference, and then maybe we bring Joel back, and maybe he's a little more down on his luck, and we were like, what does down on his luck look like to him? Because we were thinking about like John McClane, because he does this whole John McClane Die Hard thing in that episode. And so we're like, what is the Joel equivalent of like, you know, walking barefoot on broken glass? and I think we had so much fun writing this guy who was so far on up top to like fall so hard on his face that he's like, you know, sleeping with elderly women just to have a place to like stay at this hotel. That I don't know, we just kind of fell in love with him, and then we just like, you know, it was like every time we looked down, he was still stuck to our shoe, and I was like, well, I guess he's just not going away. Like we're just gonna keep writing him.
Okay. So it's not like we were stuck with Joel because I feel like when we were breaking episodes, and this is like the majority of it is due to like Zach's performance of this character, because like we all just like fell in love with him immediately, and so Scott in particular was just like, so what's Joel up to? Like, what's our friend Joel up to? And then I don't know if you've noticed, because the ensemble, as we wrote at some point, is getting unwieldy. We just keep adopting characters. Yeah. And a lot of that has to do with the performance of the actors that we've cast, that Chelsi cast. But it's fun and challenging both, because it's like, I don't want to let go of these characters, but like, why are they still here? You know? So it's like that. It's like balancing that.
It must be hard to like hold all the limes at once, you know? Like there's just you got an armful of limes, and where are they gonna go?
They're just dropping everywhere.
Exactly.
You know, there's a reason we took a 3-year hiatus, and it's because writing hour-long full ensemble with like 15 characters it's hard. It's hard to give them all something to do.
There was supposed to be like a Joel-centric episode in this season.
Mm-hmm.
And we ended up breaking that like 5 times, and we couldn't figure it out. And then it just kind of, because Joel, as much of a disaster fire as Joel is, he's the one that's like the most emotionally stable.
Yes.
Yes.
Which is like, so that's like his mini arc in this episode is kind of like, no, he is like, he's the glue that holds everything together right now.
Mm-hmm. The Joel centric episodes that we tried to write, I mean, there were multiple. And I don't want to get into like too many specifics until we get to the next episode, because I think it begets what happens in the next episode. But the point of the Joel episode was like, we were bending over backwards to try and figure out how to give him like an episode centric character arc. And it was so difficult because like we were like, yeah, his whole thing is just like, yeah, whatever, man, like I'll just roll with it, you know, and we were trying to figure out a way to make that a negative, and it's really hard. So this is kind of like, this is the Joel centric episode, is this sequence in this episode, basically. Yeah.
Are there any other characters that along the way you found yourselves wanting to check in with, or at least just wanting to work with that actor again? Like Gwen even says in this episode that the group is half redemption arcs at this point.
Is there anyone left? I don't think there's anyone left. I mean, I think we talked about it, but I think the only dangling thread, because we lost the actress, was the stuff from Ghost Story, the reporter stuff. That was set up to keep going, and that actress decided that she did not want to be a part of the show anymore, and rather than recast and try to find a sound alike or something, I don't know, it just seemed like pointless, so we just scrapped the whole thing. So I just assumed that character never got her career back, and is, I don't know, somewhere in Montana or something.
So Zach, we've got 4 episodes left of Geek by Night after this. And I've been asking a lot of people this season on Beyond Geek by Night sort of just to look back on the series as a whole. And I'm curious on your feelings of Geek by Night and your involvement over the years, and it finally coming to a close with this big finale, and just sort of what you're sitting with.
Oh boy. It's interesting. I mean, I feel like I have a bit of an outsider's perspective on the show, just because like I wasn't like part of the core group from the original cast, and I also wasn't one of the like series regulars at the beginning or whatever. But it has slowly become such a like treasured little part of my life. These like markers of stages of my life over the past, I don't know, what is it? Over half a decade we've been working on this version of Geek by Night.
Almost a decade. We started in 2015.
2015. Yeah, because like I used to like listen to Scott's older podcasts like on the Mind Robber Network when I was like working in costume shops and stuff, just because you have like a lot of hours in the day that you have to fill while you're doing mind-numbing things. Like I was gluing a lot of pieces of armor together for my job, and I needed to listen to people talk, and like Scott's old podcasts were that for me for that period of my life, like I don't know, 2013 or 2014, and that led over into this like sort of cosmic, kismet type of thing, where I saw posted that like, oh, we're doing open auditions for a couple parts on this thing. And at that time I had been like I was working on a cartoon, like an educational cartoon, like doing localization of this Japanese cartoon about cooking and stuff like that. And so I was going into these recording sessions telling people how to make sushi. And I was like, really, I don't know, weirdly stressed about like being an artist and how that relates to also trying to earn money with your art, and being like, this is very cool that I'm like working on a TV show, but it's also a show nobody's going to watch, and I don't feel good about the work that I'm doing. But I was getting some familiarity with like recording dialogue and whatnot at the moment that I saw that audition thing. And so I was just like, yeah, I'll throw a thing out there. And because of that like offhand decision, while I was working on those random things I don't do anymore, I ended up with people that I consider some of my closest friends, like period at this point. And, I hung out with a bunch of you folks at like Disneyland for Scott's bachelor party. Like this is a huge part of my life that I don't know where I'd be if I had not decided to like throw out a random audition for that. So like this is in a way the most wholesome corner of my social life for such a long period of time. And it's funny that it's like for the most part just like people I know on the internet.
Yeah. It's funny, Zach. I remember when Scott showed me your audition. We were in Chicago for Scott's birthday, and he was like, listen, you've got to hear this audition. It's amazing. And I heard your voice and I was like, oh my God, wait, this guy's great. I cannot wait to work with him.
Yeah.
That's really
And here
sweet.
we are.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I feel great about the show being able to like conclude in a way that feels earned and earnest and complete, because it's really hard to finish things. Like it's hard to make anything, but like finishing things is particularly hard, but that's also the only way you like get real experience doing the toughest part of it is to finish things, like even if it's just like a screenplay nobody ever sees, there's a difference between starting a screenplay and getting halfway into it and stopping versus finishing the screenplay. So to do that on this scale, where it's not only finishing one script, but it's finishing dozens of scripts and finishing an entire linked narrative and also building this whole big project with people that you love and people that mean a lot to you, that's the coolest thing you can do. And so I'm just very excited to see what people think about the way it ends, but also to like have the nice bow to put on it. Because the relationships are going to continue forever, but the work itself, it's nice. It's really nice to finish something.
Sure.
Also, someone should hire all of us to do it again.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed. And if you need an after show, I know a guy.
Yeah.
I want to switch gears here to Gretchen West. And Chelsi, I want to get your thoughts on Gretchen's character and powers in this episode. In general, it was just a big Gretchen episode with more than one Gretchen taking center stage.
Yeah, this episode was big, like emotionally for Gretchen and for me. It was a lot of I don't know. It was really hard work. I remember recording this episode and just like it took a lot out of me. Recording like both Agent Gretchen and just regular Gretchen. It's interesting to see the way Gretchen has developed, and I feel like she has spent a lot of time trying to gain confidence in her powers, and I feel like as she was starting to kind of like trust herself a little bit more, this really kind of scary, tragic thing happens, and that's I don't know, that's a really hard thing to go through, and I really felt that when I was recording this episode. And yeah, I don't know, it was just a big moment for me as an actor too. Like I don't get a lot of opportunities to explore something like that, and especially with a character that I've known for so long. And yeah, I don't know. It was...
So
yeah. Chelsi absolutely wrecks in this episode.
Crushed it. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I was when I was going through, and I don't know, I'm sure Cass will have lots to say about directing the episode, but I know when I was editing, especially that last scene, not the Last Man one, but the one before that. Their performance was like making me cry, because it was so heartbreaking. So, I mean, it was exactly what I think we were picturing when we were writing it. So, yeah, it's just, I mean, it was so good. I don't know if Cass had a similar experience.
No, yeah, I was, there were like 3 scenes that I was really nervous about, directing in this one. And like cause that's like the emotional climax of the episode. And it's not like a good one. So I was very nervous about, directing that, but like Chelsi gave me so much to work with. And it, which was great, but also like I didn't like hearing my friend cry for 5 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah. But no, like and I even like the Agent Gretchen stuff. Like I love that Agent Gretchen is just kind of a little scamp. Like, and like the vocal quality is like different. Like you can tell who's speaking, especially in the final scene, the confrontation. Because there's like a lower raspy quality to Agent Gretchen, which I was just like, oh yeah, she's a little stinker. I like that. So
I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah, that's so like that gave me a lot to work with too for that. Just like pulling the takes that I liked for those.
Yeah, I was super nervous doing that because I was like, okay, I'm literally just, it's me and me in this scene. Like,
right.
I gotta make sure I sound very different.
That is one thing I've loved about the show in general, not to butt in, just that for something like this type of genre fare where you can play around with so many different weird scenarios that make sense in the world you built, it just like on the actor side provides a lot of interesting challenges or interesting new, you're not just doing the same type of character every time you come in to record. Sometimes you're doing the evil version of the character, or the like,
British
all the
version.
making its weird stuff that we did. Yeah. Where, like I complained a lot about it when I was recording it, but it was
I complained so much.
Yeah, I was so mad at that. You guys based that idea on like back when I had a better like English accent that I used more frequently, because I was like doing a bunch of Shakespeare back when I did my initial audition, and I used to like I did a Shakespeare play in Los Angeles where they're like, can you do just the whole thing in an English accent? I'm like, I guess. And like that was I think a month before I did my initial audition for Geek by Night, so I actually sent in 2 versions of my audition where I did like an American Joel and an English Joel for some stupid reason. But like, so this joke is a callback to that. But when I had to actually do it, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I don't know why I agreed to this nonsense. But it is kind of fun because like the joke works either way. Like it's fine that it's not a very good accent. I did complain a lot.
With your long forgotten name, we call upon you.
We call upon you.
In the words of the unspeakable language, we call upon you.
We call upon you.
By the spilt blood of the wicked, who walk upon this world, sprouting the words of false idols, we call upon you.
We call upon you.
On the land of the dead harvest, that which brings the earth itself into your service, Yamal, we call upon you.
We call upon you. We call upon you. We call upon you.
Yamal calls upon you.
The Sprouting, a Call of Cthulhu actual play podcast by Blighthouse Studio. Find us on your podcatcher of choice.
Cass, from a directing standpoint, I'm curious to know what some of the challenges were with directing a single actor playing 2 different roles, sometimes in the same room. We had like Simon and Agent Simon interacting with each other, Gretchen and Agent Gretchen. I imagine that was a new, weird experience for this episode, or the last few episodes specifically.
I guess the most important thing to me, and a lot of our actors like picked up on it, was just like make it distinct. And whether that be in like the vocal like tone or just like the attitude. So that like it's different enough that we can like hear them without seeing them, you know? Like that's always the challenge with this, because it's like there was a lot more action in this episode originally too. But I know Scott was like tearing his hair out trying to figure out how to make it work without the cinematic quality, and he's like, no, I have to cut all of this. So like there's a lot, not a lot, but like there's like chunks of the episode where we had to like pare it down because it's like, this isn't working in this format, and how do we fix it, you know? But I'm really proud of all of our actors, all of the like the core, the watchdogs, for turning in like performances that felt distinct from the characters that we've been following for so long. So I hope that came through in the episode. I think it did.
And not just evil either. Like we saw Agent Mindy watch Agent Simon die, and like they have their own fleshed out personalities. It's not just bizarro versions of the people we know. It definitely comes across for sure.
That's good.
I had the pleasure of being able to read the script for this episode, and there's a great little moment in the script where Gretchen finally transports everybody back, and there's a script direction that says, an implosion of space and time. Good luck, future Scott.
Yep.
So I'm very curious, Scott. How was the editing process for an episode that was this action-packed and cinematic and unique?
It was absolute hell.
Yeah. He's like, I'm hiring someone to do this next time.
Yeah. No, I wanted to die multiple times editing this. And you know, it was, you know, what's funny is I thought for sure that was going to be the most difficult thing, but it wasn't. The absolute most difficult thing was the power couple like versus everybody scene.
Yeah.
That was the one that like I would open it, and then I would move a couple of things around, and I'd be like, no, fuck this. And I'd close it and leave. Because I couldn't handle it. It was too much. And as Cass alluded to, like at a certain point, you know, I had to just start cutting stuff out in order to get it to work, because I could not get it to flow the way that it was in the script, which I think it works really well in the script. But as soon as I tried to pull that into audio only format, I was like, I would do something and I would do it exactly like it is in the script. And I'd be like, no one is going to have any idea what is going on right now. So I had to, and it was either I cut this all out, which I don't think anything is missing from the episode. No. Like, I don't even remember what I cut out, to be perfectly honest, because the episode is just sort of what the episode is now to me. And it works perfectly fine. But it was either cut stuff out, or it was going to be like asking people to like re-record just like really sweaty exposition of like describing things that are happening out loud for no reason. And I just couldn't. I was like, no, I don't want to do that, because that'll like totally ruin the vibe of this. So I just shortened everything. I tightened it all up, and eventually got through it. But was it like a month or 6 weeks that I was working on just that scene?
I think
Cass?
so. Yeah.
Because
it took a while for me to turn it in, and then I'm like, okay, I'm sorry. Here, good luck. And then you're just like, no, I hate this. This is the worst.
Yeah. That was the hardest one, but I got it to a place that I was really happy with. I still think there's a couple of lines that I had to get people to re-record. Yeah. Just to like fill in a little bit of a gap. But other than that, I think it speaks for itself. I think it turned out really well. And then in terms of that particular stage direction that you're talking about, I wrote that to myself in the script. But I didn't know how to describe it, and I didn't know what it was gonna be. But what I basically, I formed that scene. the way that I can describe it, I guess, is that I created those sound effects out of like I don't know, almost like a symphony that builds to a crescendo. And so I started with like one layer of sound, and then I added another layer on top of that, and another and I just kept, every time that there was a new element introduced into the problem with the other Gretchen and all of that, I just kept building and building and building, and yeah. Just finally got it to the place that it was, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. I think it's really, really good. I think when I sent that scene to Cass, I said something like, "I better win a fucking award." But yeah, it was yeah, no, it's one of my favorite things that I've designed on the show. From a sound design perspective, I just think I don't know. I'm really proud of it. I think it turned out really, really well.
It's a great moment.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. So you did sorcery, basically. That's what I got out of that description.
It's so weird. I cannot describe what my process is in figuring out some of these things. I imagine a sound, and then I break it apart in my brain, and I try to find all the individual sounds that are going to make up the sound that I'm hearing.
Great.
Yeah.
And I usually get pretty close, but
I am always impressed because there have been multiple scripts where we've gotten some sort of situation like that where it's just kind of like, I don't know, something crazy is going to happen and Scott will figure out how to do it. I'm always just like, I have no idea how that's going to happen, and as soon as I hear it, I'm like, yeah, wait, that makes total sense. That totally comes across. Wait, you nailed that.
Yeah. And it's not even just the big flashy stuff like how does this fight sound or how does this implosion of space-time sound. It's also things like just making people sound like they're in different spaces or there's a different quality to the space. Like I was re-listening to this episode and I was shocked because I was there and Scott was there, that we recorded all of my lines in one space. Like I didn't change, the actual environment I was in. But to hear it go from like, this is Joel in a jungle, this is Joel at sea, this is Joel in a spacesuit in outer space, freaking out about being in outer space, and you can just hear it.
Yeah,
that's magical to me. That's crazy.
Truly.
That sequence was probably the most fun I've ever had editing something. Because I knew exactly what I want, and it was just like laying it out and hitting it, and every time a new scene would set up and I would nail it, I'd be like, yeah. Like it was very satisfying to put together.
I know, I think that took you less than a day.
Yeah. I was really, really. Yeah, I remember Cass was very surprised that I was done with it already.
Yeah, because I know you were like stressed out about it, and you're like, "No, it's done." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool."
Yeah. No, that was thrilling. I loved putting that one together.
Yeah, between this episode and the last episode, Making It Weird, there was just a lot of playful sound design. So I'm glad to hear that there were things that were enjoyable.
Yeah. Next episode is very different.
Another thing I really like about this episode, and to be fair, this is something that I feel like Geek by Night has always done well, but in this episode, there is a lot of earned tonal shifts. We still have our team cracking jokes and giving our little secret quotes and asides and stuff, but we also have some really serious moments. Like we have Joel being very vulnerable with Nathan, and we have Simon watching his father die. So I'm curious from especially Cass directing and writing and having so much control over the tone of an episode. How do you balance out those scenes and sort of create that rhythm of those ups and downs that make the show so great?
Well, I definitely think it's like most of it's in the script. Like Nick and Scott and I will lay out like, okay, so what is this group doing, or what is this group doing, and like what are the consequences of this group doing their actions and stuff. And I think I kind of like the tonal chaos of this. It's because it's like a controlled sort of chaos. Like we have because we don't really split the group all that often. So you have like our ground team, like our rescue op team, like, fighting Godzilla, which is like every time I talk about this out of context, I'm like, this is the stupidest thing in the world. I love it so much. And we have like the scene with Lorelai and Billy, and then the like one-on-one conversation with Joel and Nathan, and then you have the really big like emotionally charged like Simon scene. So I think that like laying the groundwork in the script, I just have to like, I don't know. And because like when we're writing this, at least for me, like when I'm writing it, I have a fairly clear idea of like how I want the line to sound, or like how I want like the flow of it to go. So it's mostly just like Scott said, like laying pieces together and just kind of like figuring it out from the blueprint, I don't know if that made any sense.
No, it does. Yeah,
absolutely.
And it comes off very well.
Mm-hmm.
I really, really enjoyed this episode.
Folks, who knew that we'd be releasing this at such a like fertile cultural moment for Godzilla? I was thinking about that this morning. We got
I manifested it.
We got like a Kurt Russell TV show about Godzilla right now, and we got like the highest grossing Godzilla movie like ever, like Japanese Godzilla movie ever in theaters, and like we got Lorelai saying how much she loves Godzilla, Chonky Boy.
Chonky Boy.
Those are on equal planes for me.
Yeah.
Another really great thing that we got in this episode was the reveal of the last man's identity as the Ire. So I definitely want to talk about this before we wrap up here, because this was really fun for me because I spent a lot of time thinking about who the last man was. Like I knew pretty early that like it was going to have to be somebody, it was going to have to be a reveal just because of, how integrated it is into the plot. But I actually guessed originally that it was Joel because
no, not guessed. You were confident.
I actually was
like,
quite confident.
I would bet money. I'm ready to say it. Like it's gonna happen.
And I felt like it fit. And this episode actually touched on a lot of the reasons why that Joel has those heroic personality traits, but not necessarily the powers.
Yeah,
or
when
the
you first
origin
pitched
particle or
that
anything.
suggestion, I was like, what? Where's that coming from? And then as I was listening to this episode, I was like, you know what? It could it could land. Like it felt kind of villain origin-y a little bit, like, like all your friends have superpowers and you don't. And yeah. So
I do have a little question about this though. So we get this reveal, the Ire, who was originally voiced by Mark Allen Jr., but you guys had Gene Marks play the last man, and I'm curious about like that creative decision, especially because like the agents are all playing themselves. Were you really trying to put a lot into like hiding that identity and building up to this big reveal?
No, because Gene Marks is a fake name.
Is it?
That was Mark Allen Jr. the whole time.
Holy shit!
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
wait, I don't think I knew that.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
That's the we asked Mark's permission, and he was like, yeah, I occasionally use this name, use this, because I didn't want to reveal, because I knew that if I credited him, everyone would know that he was the Ire the whole time.
Yeah, of course.
So we've been crediting him under a fake name until this episode.
Yes.
But yeah, it was Mark Allen Jr. the whole time.
Oh my god.
And he absolutely wrecks house.
Yes.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
It was so much fun, and having both of them together at the end, it just made perfect sense. But I would never have guessed that. I genuinely I even wrote a question to prepare for this, like, why did you guys cast somebody else? But he just did such a great job. It sounded like somebody else. That's so awesome.
It's wild.
Yeah, that's great.
Even like in like the initial table read or whatever, it's fascinating to watch Mark do his thing, because he can just do insane villain laughs and weird helmet talk, like just in person immediately. Like, I don't know, maybe everybody else is just better at acting than I am. I have to work my way into like being able to do Joel stuff. I feel like everybody else is like, yeah, I can just like talk like the person. But to just see Mark be like, yeah, I'll just be this psycho for half a second and pop back out of it. I was like, damn, that's awesome. Crushed it.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, he was asking me like, how do you? I was like, I told him that I wanted him to sort of disguise his voice a little, but I didn't want him to change. I wanted him to sound like the Ire when he was recording his lines, but I told him to do the Ire doing an impression of Rorschach.
Yes, I can absolutely hear that.
Oh my
and so
God.
if you go back and you listen to if I could play like a track, like an unproduced track of one of his Last Man performances, that's what it sounds like. It's just the Ire, but he's doing a Rorschach impression. And then obviously, I put that through like the helmet filter and all of that stuff.
It's like, if you ever see a behind the scenes thing of South Park when Trey's doing the Cartman voice, it just sounds like Stan doing an impression of Cartman, and then they apply the young filter to it. Or no, it sounds like the dad doing an impression of Cartman, but then they do the filter to it, and all of a sudden it sounds like Cartman. It's fascinating.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my
That's
God.
so cool. I'm so glad I asked.
That's
My mouth just dropped. That's so great. Does anybody else have any closing thoughts on this awesome episode, or shout outs to anybody else who contributed to the episode that might not be in the room here today?
I got two because I don't know as much about this production as anybody else, so I feel like I'll just throw mine out, and then everybody will have actual interesting things to say. Number one, I just want to shout out Brian Brown, because I did all my half of the Joel podcast stuff in like a vacuum, and the way it totally changed and kind of sung once Brian's voice was in it. I mean, like, you can't do a like mellifluous smooth voice off with Brian because he'll crush everybody every time. And so it was just really nice to like hear it all connect together in terms of like the storyteller voice and this power connected to the, I don't know, it was just really cool for me. I just think he's so smooth and so subtle in what he does. So that was cool. Other thing I want to shout out is probably my favorite line in this entire episode, by a pretty wide margin, is Chris's underplayed delivery of needs more pouches during a Rob Liefeld joke. Like, they're talking about the big gun that can do everybody's powers or whatever, and there's this whole Rob Liefeld side thing, and Chris just very quietly throws in this like, needs more pouches. And I've driven myself crazy in enough recording sessions trying to do a casual throwaway joke like that, and it's much harder than it seems. And Chris just crushes it every time. He's amazing. So I just want to put that out there.
Oh man.
I wanted to shout out Andrew as Simon. Simon goes through it in
Very
this
much
episode
so.
and
Yeah.
the next episode. And every the putting together the scene with Simon and David was it was very like narratively fulfilling, but it was also like, oh my God, this is so sad. And like the quality of the performance just was like, it's I hesitate to say joy because it's like, it's sad, but it is like a joy to listen to. Like, he does a really good job as Simon, so I want to say.
I too am going to shout out two things. I feel like we haven't talked enough about the Lorelai Billy scenes.
Yes.
Kind of in this whole arc.
Yeah.
But in this episode in particular, I mean, it's just, they're so good, and I feel like you can really feel, Naomi always just absolutely wrecks house as Lorelai, but there's so many complex emotions that she's playing in these scenes,
a lot, yeah.
Especially here, because there's a little bit of nostalgia. There's this sort of like sadness of what could have been. There's anger. There's like literal fury. There's disgust. There's all these things, and then all of that crescendos here into pity. And it's just, there's just so much happening, and it's so good. And then also Nick killing it. I feel like he was really nervous about this scene a little bit as an actor. I don't think he thought it was gonna work. And so he kept kind of like scaling it back. And I was like, no. You need to sound on the verge of death. Like, you have to like really go for it. I think I had him redo this a few times.
Worth it.
And I think by the time
it's
he
very
did it the
jarring when
third
you finally
time,
hear it.
I think by the time he did it like the third time, I think he was a little annoyed that I was making him do it again. But it kind of plays.
He warmed down.
Not to like accidentally walk backwards into being like Darren Aronofsky and manipulating my cast. But like I kind of think that ended up working in the long run because he just sounds very much on the verge of death and also just so pissed off
tired
and annoyed
and fed up.
and tired. Yeah. It's really, really good. So that's great. And then we haven't talked about Scott Tofty at all.
Tofty.
And his work, his score in this episode.
So good.
I was not expecting so much new stuff in this arc.
Yeah.
I figured he would come up with a few themes and then he would reuse them throughout the arc and whatever. But that, the stuff that he does to like set the mood in the Joel sort of montage, different world stuff was really incredible.
Yeah.
The music that he did in the Simon, David's death scene is so good. And the way he incorporates the heartbeat and all of that. Oh my God. So good. And
Very
then
subtle,
of course the time space explosion, that entire sequence is just like, I told him what I did with the sound effects. And then he was like, oh, I'm going to do that with the music to like kind of like go in tandem with the sound effects. And so like, that's what he also did. And it just, I mean, I think it speaks for itself. It's just absolutely killer. This the score for this episode just absolutely wrecks, and it was so unexpected that it wrecked so hard because it's like, I was expecting making it weird to be the real standout in terms of the score, and I mean, in a lot of ways it is, right? But this is like quietly just really, really impressive stuff.
Because at this point, the show has such a strong musical identity that we don't even really need strong transitions between scenes. Like, when the music kicks up and starts getting faster, we know that we're back outside with our guys fighting the watchdogs. And, it just flows so well like that. And we talked about it last week with Making It Weird, but I love the musical personality of this show and how consistent it's been, but just continually improving over 40 plus episodes.
It's magic to me. I don't understand how music works, so it's like literal magic every time. Wow, amazing.
Before we wrap up, I do want to make a few announcements about what's happening with the show now going forward. So a couple of things. One, the show is on YouTube now. So if that's your preference to listening to podcasts, great news. All the episodes are on YouTube, and they're hitting the same day as the regular podcast feeds. So there's that. Two, on the Patreon a few years back, we re-released the original classic Geek by Night episodes from like 2007 with the original cast and everything, and with commentary between Nick and myself, sort of reflecting on those old episodes. Those are on the Patreon, and I have now taken I made them free. So all you have to do is just go to Patreon and listen to those episodes if you want. And you're probably going to want to do that because in a good news, bad news situation, we are taking a small hiatus now. The next episode, this is airing, I believe, in February, and our next episode will hit on April 1st. Which is the variant issue is the name of
the
next episode.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So that episode is going to hit on April 1st, taking a small break. However, in a good news, bad news thing, right? Bad news, that's happening, right? But if you want to hear that episode right now, you will be able to, because it will be up on Patreon right now. Yeah. So it's done. It's just we need more time for the episodes after that. And so we need this little bit of break to just sort of like catch up a little bit. But the next episode is ready to go. we're just holding it back from the main feed until April 1st. But if you are really desperate for it, go listen to it. It's on Patreon. You can do that. So those are the announcements. So hopefully you're all like, oh no, a hiatus. Is it going to be another 3 years? No, it's not. I promise. I promise. It's really, really, really not. Yeah. April 1st, the next episode will hit the main feed on April 1st, and you can listen to it right now on Patreon. We're very, very serious about getting everything out this year. You guys have waited long enough. Mm-hmm. We just need a few weeks to catch up and get our bearings before we release more episodes. Also, that episode in particular is feature length, so there's that. Mm-hmm. And we'll also feature 2 Beyond episodes as a result. So it'll be that episode, 2 Beyond episodes, and then back with like sort of the final trilogy of episodes shortly after that. But yeah, that's it. That's all the announcements.
That was so smoothly done. That was like really, that was impressive podcasting. Just in general.
It's like you're kind of
I've been doing it long enough. I would hope so.
I want to say thank you to all of my awesome guests for coming on today. Scott, Zach, Cass, and Chelsi for joining me. What?
You're so welcome.
I appreciate your time. You came so far to record with me. And thank you to all of you, the fans, the underdogs, for listening to us today. If you'd like to support the show, please join the Dueling Genre Patreon at duelinggenre.com/support. You'll also get access to classic Geek by Night episodes, scripts, and other behind-the-scenes materials, as well as bonus content from some of Dueling Genre's best shows, including weekly episodes of Dueling Genre Tonight, which is a lot of fun. You can also tell your friends, families, and followers to subscribe to Geek by Night on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you are listening to this right now. YouTube, yes. We can add that to the list. Finally, if you like our show, please leave a positive rating for us on iTunes. Thank you for going beyond Geek by Night with us. Have a super day.